All right, Carol, you're good.
Okay, let's see. And sorry, trying to do too many things at once. So welcome everybody. So this is the July meeting of the Trinity County Fire Safe Council. So we'll do a quick welcome and introductions. Let's start with the folks at the RCD conference room.
Yes, I'll start. Kelly Sheen, District Manager for the Trinity County Resource Conservation District.
Michael Crockett, Caltrans, Supervisor.
Joe McNeely, Weaverville Area Superintendent, Caltrans.
Tim Ritchie, Weaverville Battalion Chief for the Forest Service.
Chris Cole, Trinity County RCD Forest Health Program Manager.
Amelia Flights, Trinity County Resource Conservation District Watershed Program Manager and Trinity County Fire Safe Council Coordinator.
Dave Jaramillo, Forester, Cal Fire, Shasta Trinity.
Okay, thanks. So I'm Carol Fall. I'm the chair of the Trinity County Fire Safe Council, and I'm going to pass it to the Zoom audience, starting with Jerry Cousins, and pass it on from there.
Hi, Jerry Cousins. I'm a collaborative member, and I may have to bail early. I have one of those big dead pine trees quickly dying, and I have some tree people coming over sometime this afternoon to look at taking it out. So having said that, I'll pass it over to Pat. Pat, you're muted.
I don't think your microphone is on.
Okay, now I'm there. I am. So Pat
What
Frost,
you need for
Service
the map, or are
District.
you figuring out how to send it to me? Okay,
I'll pass it on to Randy.
I muted her.
You have to unmute her.
Good afternoon. This is Randy Paris, Forestry and Fuel Program Manager at the Watershed Center.
Randy's going to pass it on to Tom March.
Hey, everybody, Tom March, Caltrans Landscape Specialist in Reading.
Okay, how about Aaron?
Hello, everyone. Aaron Hathaway with Cal Fire. I'm the pre-fire engineer. I work alongside Jaramillo.
Okay, and Kenneth.
Kenneth Baldwin, consulting forester and landowner out on Indian Creek.
Let's see, Denise.
Hi, Denise Wesley, JS Manager for the Trinity County Resource Conservation District.
And Gina.
Hi, my name is Gina with the Willow Creek Fire Safe Council.
And let's see, Larry.
Hey, Larry Glass with the Trinity Collaborative and Safe Alternatives for Our Forest Environment.
Let's see, and Nancy, welcome, you're on. Want to introduce yourself?
Nancy Curran, Field Forester, Bad River Ranger District on the Six Rivers.
Okay, and Dave.
Dave DeLang, Trinity PUD Vegetation Program Manager.
Okay, so let's see, who am I missing? Ben.
Hey, good afternoon, Ben Sundahl, Deputy District Ranger, South Fork and Trinity River Management Unit, Shasta Trinity National Forest.
Great to see you, Ben. Thanks for joining us. And Sandy.
Hi, Sandy Faulkner, Fire Prevention, Weaverville and Big Bar.
And let's see, RC Jennings.
Randy Jennings, I'm the district FMO out of the Hayfork Ranger District for the Forest Service.
Oh, hi, Randy. Okay, now who did I not get for introductions? Are we missing anybody?
No.
That's it? Okay. So thank you all for taking a few hours out of a hot afternoon, hopefully to sit in the air conditioning. So do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
We have 2 letters of support to add under grants for TCRCD's S&C grants. One for Petty John and one for, what are you calling the other one?
Trinity Rhodes Partnership.
Okay, so those would be under grants.
Yep.
All right. Okay. And then at some point, I want to add a potential discussion or information item on the owner-built housing ordinance that's being proposed for consideration by the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday. So let's see.
We'll just add that as number 4 and then, or like 3.3.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Amelia.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think most of the group, this just came out half hour ago, but so Chris, do you want to explain the 2 grant applications and the request for letters of support?
Yeah.
Which one do you want to start with?
We'll start with the Petty John project. So this is, we'd asked for a letter of support a while back, and we applied and did not receive the grant. So we're trying again and taking a little different tack with it. So this is a collaboration with the Forest Service to do some 500 acres of mechanical treatment where that green is, where the cursor is. And then 150 acres roadside fuel break along where that yellow is. And then do 1,000 acres of burning in collaboration, directly with the Forest Service. So as commercial harvest occurs out there, as well as mechanical treatments and roadside fuels reduction, we will help essentially burn the piles and do the concentration jackpot burning as well with the Forest Service. And so this funding would also, we'd contract with the Watershed Center to do most of the mechanical treatment, the 500 acres mechanical, as well as contract with them to provide personnel for when we do the burning on the Forest Service land. So that's basically the whole project. So it'd be 1,000 acres burning, 500 acres of mechanical treatment, which could be anything from just regular mastication, or it could be fuel wood removal to locations where the public could have access to it. And then another 11 acres that's not roadside fuel break, but just a little concentration area where Rush Street basically leaves Highway 3. So that's the Petty John project for us that we're asking for the Sierra Nevada Conservancy.
Okay, so any questions for Chris?
Yeah. So Chris, it looks that red line on Trinity Dam Boulevard. So is there work all the way along Trinity Dam Boulevard?
So there is work all the way along it, and a lot of that's already under contract and underway currently with the Forest Service. And so we're just kind of seeking just to do that other portion, the more northern line where the yellow is. So some of the other work is already it's already being covered by the Forest Service. So we're not trying to duplicate effort or anything.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I have a couple questions. So some of that looks like it had been done in the past, some fuel reduction. I mean, had there been past roadside fuel break work along Trinity Dam Boulevard?
Maybe Tim could speak to
Yeah,
that.
so in 20, I don't know, whenever we had actual snow, a few years ago, there was a bunch of trees that fell, and we worked with the CAL FIRE camp to treat the roads in that area for the dead and down material, and we were able to thin out to 50 feet. The Petty John project, this is part of that late successional LSR project. The fuel breaks in there. It's going to allow us to treat out to 150 feet on both sides of the road. And so while we do have a nice little start at 50 feet in some areas, we definitely want to expand that fuel break out to a more appropriate level. So along County Road, Trinity Dam Boulevard, like I said, 150 feet on both sides of the road. The Buckeye Ridge Road out through Red Flat from the Hella Base back to the SPI property. That's much more expansive. We're looking at going 600 feet on both sides of the road for that fuel break. And that's the Watershed Center had supported that work. I think, you know, there's some folks here that have a lot of knowledge of that project history and where we've been at with litigation. So we're finally able to start implementing on that project. It does align with some of the cooperative fuel break efforts that have been brought up between SPI, Forest Service, BLM, and other private ownership to protect the communities of Weaverville and Lewiston. So that's why we're trying to focus on those areas, those high use road systems, and then those primary big ridges. And then the other side of that is we're also trying to stay out of the timber component for the time being, for the fuels work, so we can let the contractor, whenever that project goes out to bid or replacement volume, for other timber sales, we can let that company complete their work before we're in there chasing them around doing a bunch of fuels work on those acres.
Okay, thanks. That helps a lot. So anybody have any questions for then Chris or Tim about the Petty John grant application?
Just a follow-up, Chris or Tim. So the part of the work along Trinity Dam Boulevard from the dam down, you know, along Lewiston Lake, are you going to do anything special to treat the broom, or are you just going to cut and pile as like everything else?
So that from essentially the road that goes up to the Hella Base Cal Fire camp down to Lewiston to the old bridge, that's under contract right now. They've completed all the way down to Pine Cove Marina, a little hot and dry. So they've been pulled off of the project due to the project activity levels. Within those areas, they just cut and piled the Scotch broom. I talked with Lucetta to see if she has some interest from the botany side to go in and do some follow-up treatment. So that will be up to her decision on what they do there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so you're looking at the draft letter. So anybody have any questions or concerns about the draft letter? Okay, well, I think hearing no questions or concerns, I think we will go ahead and send the letter then to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy supporting the Petty John project.
So just one comment. I think if you can weave it in there somewhere, it might be nice to mention that, you know, the projects probably are listed in the countywide CWPP.
Okay, we can make that modification.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea, Chris. Okay, the next project requesting support then is Trinity Rhodes Partnership.
So this is similar, well, a different project, but also funded from the S&C. So the map is a pretty big scale, so it's kind of hard to see the details on it. But this is just to do a roadside treatment of SPI roads that are all the roads you see on this map, and it incorporates the roads that are also on the Petty John project. So that's the roads just to the most southernmost portion of the map. And this would be in collaboration with SPI. It would basically help administer the contractors, and they have, you know, all the know-how to do this type of work. They just don't have the funding to do it. And we would basically do 25 to 50 feet each side of the road to make all those roads, you know, open and passable for any engines that need to get through there, or as well as just regular, you know, people who are going out to the Alps, and to make all those roads essentially like little fuel breaks that vary, 50 to 100 feet wide. So not as strategic as like ridgetop stuff, but just along, so it's just a roadside treatment for this. And the idea would be to primarily use a boom masticating head to get all that roadside stuff done. And then it would also include some funding for the Trinity RCD crews or hand crews. If there were some hazard trees that need to be felled or some areas that needed a little, something that a masticator couldn't get to just from the roadside. So that's what this project is. And it's like 82 or 81.5 miles of road. So it's a lot of road. And it should treat around 700 acres when it's complete.
So Chris, the draft letter says 82.5 miles of road and 995 acres.
There is an updated letter. I had just gotten off the phone with Keith Greenwood, the district manager for SPI locally. And basically that modification happened about 5 minutes before this meeting started. So the mileage is the same, but the acreage is dropped because we want to have a little more flexibility, as it's not always going to be exactly 50 feet wide. It's going to be very just based on topography and what's reasonable.
So the draft letter talks about the roads being highly traveled for summer recreation in and around Lewiston and Trinity Lake. So on the map, it looks like the roads aren't anywhere accessing the lake. So I have two questions. One is, are any of them accessing trailheads, and are you more concerned about recreation access to Trinity Alps Wilderness?
That could probably be modified. I mean, some of them do go to the lake, or maybe not to the lake, but they're accessed off of 3. A lot of them are more Alps oriented, just based on where they are. So we could make that change.
Yeah, looks like there's only 2 roads that are on the east side of Highway 3. They're all on the west side. Or the only ones east of Highway 3 are up way north of Coffee Creek. So which public is traveling on the SPI roads?
Well, I know they drive them to get to trailheads that are in the Alps.
Okay.
So these are shared use roads?
So they're not all shared use roads. Some of them are, currently gated, but some of them are, and they just, weave in and out through Forest Service land. So lots of them are open.
Okay, so I think you would want to have a more accurate letter than, something that talks about which roads potentially are accessing Trinity Alps trailheads. I mean, and I don't see that there's much protecting Lewiston either.
Yeah, I mean, some of those roads are the same as the Pettyjohn projects, so maybe it's a little looser the case, but I would say they'd still protect Lewiston to some degree. But I mean, I can remove that if people want that.
Maybe we change the word from protect to have a benefit to
Yeah.
the community of like Rush Creek or Lewiston.
Yeah, I just don't want you guys applying under essentially a false narrative, so you're not going to necessarily protect Lewiston. And they aren't highly traveled for summer recreation in and around Lewiston and Trinity Lake. That implies Lewiston Lake. So I would say it sounds like a great project. I really appreciate that from After the River Complex. SPI was awesome in terms of trying to let firefighters use their roads and look at access on their roads. So it's a good project in my opinion, but I'm concerned about the narrative describing it.
Okay, we'll work on the narrative and get back to you.
Okay, so Are there other questions from the other Fire Safe Council members?
So me again. So I was just curious because this is Sierra Nevada Conservancy and they only care about the upper Trinity, river watershed, whether it would be useful in your project title to add upper in front of Trinity, Upper Trinity Roads Partnership, to emphasize that it's about the upper Trinity River where they fund things.
Yeah, I could add that. Some of it, we already have some signed documents that have this title on there, but
Okay.
yeah. But that's that red line that's kind of weaves around the lake. I mean, that's their area. So
Right.
it should be, I don't know, they should recognize that this is in their area. But next time that probably would have been a better title.
What about maintenance? Is there any thoughts for maintenance on something like that?
Yeah, so SBI is drafting me a letter that's basically if we can get this project done, then they are committed to maintain it. And they've expressed that, they also wouldn't even be interested in doing this project if they didn't think they could maintain it. So
that might be something important to add into that.
Into the letter.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if people think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the grant proposal, but it's not on that letter, but I can.
Yeah.
I'll add it. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, so how is the community fire department involved in this? And the last sentence in the letter.
We'll just remove that. Some of this language was kind of hastily put together, so it's not maybe as relevant as it should be. So we'll work and modify it.
So when is the grant application due?
Tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, in the future, it would be nice to see the letter like a day at least ahead of time. So.
Yeah. Well, if we don't get this letter out, then it's we can always get it next time. So this is the concept proposal. So if they're taking a different tact this time around, so they do a concept, and then if you get past the concept stage, and then they ask for a full proposal with even more stuff. So it wouldn't be the end of the world if we didn't get this letter signed today.
Oh, you should be able to get it done today.
Yeah.
I think
those are fairly minor modifications. And to follow up on Pat's early comment, are any of these road improvements in the CWPP?
I would have to verify that. A lot of these roads outside of the Petty John stuff was given to me by SBI as like these were areas that they'd identified. And I've driven some of them, but it's a lot of road.
So I've talked with Mike Aronson about some of these projects, and a lot of the roads that they're looking at access fuel breaks that they are putting in on their property. And so they want, Mike's emphasis was that the fuel break is good, but it's not as successful as it could be if you cannot access it. So they wanted to make sure that the roads were in conditions that equipment could get down the road to access the fuel break. So that was the driver of treating these roads in some of these areas.
Okay. So any other questions or concerns about this draft letter with the suggested corrections?
Jill has her hand raised.
Jill?
Yeah, thanks. Help me if I'm misunderstanding, but this letter goes with the map we saw, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like unless I'm not reading the map right, I know I travel that road a lot for recreation. I mean, not now because you'd have to, throw your boat off a cliff to get to the water, but it does go around to Fairview Boat Ramp, right?
Yeah, it's the Trinity Dam Boulevard is a portion of it.
So why is it not then okay to, Carol, say that it,
Boatman that did Dawson County, they're from documentary.
That they're
Well,
highly traveled.
It was more like. It's more like, so the Trinity Lake part, very little of the road improvements are related to Trinity Lake. It's more Trinity Alps. I mean, almost all the roads on the map are on the west side of Highway 3. There are some, like was said, that kind of duplicate where they're working on the Petty John project, but these would be on private lands instead of the Forest Service. But it's just that doesn't get you any real. I don't see how that. Right. Doesn't really help Lewiston Lake. All right, so Jill, you're right. There is a little stretch where
Take this.
it's like up where the overview is for Trinity Lake. So it lets you look at Trinity Lake.
Well, it's a little bit more than that. I mean, you do pass that beautiful outlook there. Turn the camera on here. I feel like I'm in the room. You do pass that overlook, but then you go on down and you can access Trinity Alps Marina. You access Fairview. If you continue on, you access Lewiston Lake. And so I don't know. I just.
So you're right. So I think the way Amelia has the letter looks fine. So it would be sections of this project are traveled for summer recreation in and around Lewiston, Trinity Lake, and the Trinity Alps Wilderness area. But truly, when you look at the map, that's like the Trinity Lake and the Lewiston part are like.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Tiny, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hear you.
Okay.
It is tiny. I just don't think it's inaccurate. It is a small part.
You're right.
Okay.
Okay, perfect, great. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts, suggestions, concerns, or does it sound like it's okay to send this letter?
End it.
All right.
I'll leave it.
Cool, thank you.
All right. Okay. So now, not sure exactly if the Fire Safe Council wants to provide input or how you want to do this, but I just want to make you aware that the Trinity County Board of Supervisors will be considering draft ordinance on limited density owner-built rural dwellings on Tuesday at their board meeting at, I believe, 10 o'clock. So some of you might know this better as the Class K housing. And so what it does is it changes some of the building standards for owner-built housing, or under the draft ordinance, contractor-built housing. There's a draft letter that I was trying to send Amelia a minute ago that the Trinity County Fire Chiefs Association will consider on Monday, that expresses concern about the draft ordinance. I think mostly because the Fire Safe Council is in the mode of trying to improve the resilience of homes in the WUI. We're trying to promote defensible space, home hardening, all that kind of stuff. And this, to a certain extent, lessens some of those criteria. It doesn't change the criteria that CAL FIRE has in terms of water storage and access. It keeps the same electrical and building codes. It keeps some of the same fire construction codes. It takes away some of the new requirements like sprinklers and stuff for new construction. So that's why the Fire Chiefs Association is concerned, because, you know, they're the ones that are going to have to go in a burning building and deal with a structure fire. And it may be more difficult to fight a structure fire when it's kind of like different than the usual building code. So I'm looking for feedback from the Fire Safe Council, whether or not they want to say anything to the Board of Supervisors, if they want to just read the letter from the draft letter from the Fire Chiefs Association and provide individual input. So I apologize for being it's kind of a last minute thing, but anybody have any ideas on how you'd like to proceed or concerns?
So Carol, this is Jerry. I was wondering, besides the fire sprinklers, what other changes are the fire chiefs concerned about?
So basically, so the draft letter talks about the fire danger increasing at the same time that a lot of our resources have been decreasing. It says that we should be promoting things like ways in and out. We should be promoting adequate and accessible defensive space. We should have fire hydrants. We should have fire resistant building materials. I think this is the main thing, that there's no requirement with this proposed ordinance for anything resembling home hardening. So new houses now would have to put in fire resistant vents. They're still going to be required to put in either composite or metal roof, just because of the snow load issues, not for fire protection. So there's not as much of an emphasis on fire resistant building materials. Anyway, that's what the fire chiefs are concerned about. This is just a draft letter that's going to be presented to them on Monday for them to vote on. So I don't know, that probably doesn't answer your question very well.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me because that's what K housing is all about. But I understand the need for house hardening to happen. It's quite a balance to try and draft.
Yeah, I mean, the concern is that, well, so if someone's house burns down in a fire, this does essentially waive a lot of the building codes and lets them replace their house. But beyond that, it lets someone who owns property, it has to be more than 2.5 acres. It has to be in certain zoning classifications. It lets them hire a contractor or build the house themselves. It has fewer inspections. It has the same electrical plumbing building codes. It has the same CAL FIRE restrictions, but the more up-to-date building codes related to fire, like the home hardening materials, the sprinklers, all that kind of stuff, those they would not have to comply with. And it's mostly a recognition of the cost. I mean, the cost of adding all those kind of things has, really, increased the cost of building a house. So they can also use alternate building materials. That's one of the things that may be a problem. If they're using rubber tires or cob house or milled lumber that's milled on site. the fire chiefs are a little concerned that that might be unpredictable. The width of doors, that building code, I don't believe, I might be incorrect, but I don't believe that there's going to be a standardized width of doors anymore, minimum width. So if you're a firefighter and you're trying to, you know, get through a structure fire, there's just going to be questions.
So personally, I think if the fire safe council is going to say anything, it should only speak to the home hardening and nothing else. I don't think it should speak to the other codes. And maybe it just makes a suggestion that we support in adding more of the home hardening into the class K. But I don't know, even if I really.
It really feels pretty amorphous to me. And I would suggest that just let the fire chiefs address it and that the fire safe council just kind of stands back from this one.
Okay, so
I think the only negative is if this would potentially hinder future efforts to get home hardening funding for our county, which is already so disadvantaged. So I agree. I'm not pro sending a letter. I'm waffling on it, but I think it's something that we should just think about. And maybe we don't send a letter right now. Maybe we send a letter in the future.
okay, one option is that I can draft a short and sweet letter basically saying that the Fire Safe Council has been encouraging the use of fire resistant building materials and defensible space, you know, just kind of what we do. And then say that we would hope that, you know, that would be considered as the Board of Supervisors is considering their ordinance. What do you think of that? Don't speak all at once.
Hey, I just want to jump in really quick. Amelia, your thought that if you don't do a letter today, you can do it sometime in the future. I'm not exactly sure that you'll have an opportunity in the future. So just realize that. Like it could be voted on and it could be done. I don't think this is, does this require 2 readings, Carol?
I believe so. This
Okay.
This is the first.
Okay, so at most you could have, at most, or at least, you could have 2 weeks.
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear more from other people. It's not just the Jerry and Amelia Fire Safe Council. So what does the group want? Does the group not want to send a letter? That's fine. Does the group want to send something?
So I would just say my opinion is that as a supervisor, I would really like to hear the Fire Safe Council speak into it. That would be an important component, I think, of discussion. So if it's too hard, like if there's too much of a variety of opinions among the group, I understand that. But if you are aligned and you had something to say, I think it would be, I would appreciate knowing what that is and hearing that. And then I'll be quiet. You guys make your decision.
Okay, so I'll go back to my suggestion. So basically, I can write a draft letter that says, this is what the Fire Safe Council has been promoting, you know, the home hardening, the defensible space, all that kind of stuff. And that we hope that the board would consider that in their deliberations. I can send that to Amelia this evening, and then we can send it out. And then if people have major heartburn about it, they can let us know. We won't submit it. But does that sound like a potential plan?
I have a question for Jill. Jill, have you seen any of the verbiage of the ordinance up to now?
Right, here I am. I have not read the ordinance in depth. yet. And my goal is to read it and compare it to the state standard. And I guess really, if anything, I mean, Carol and I have discussed just a little piece of it. And to me, the intent when this started out was to help people whose homes have burnt be able to get back into homes and stay in Trinity County and not lose our residents, and maybe, you know, regain some of that said 10 to 12% of the housing stock that the fires have taken. And that makes sense, making it safely less onerous on people. But then when I hear the fire chiefs, you know, just really have heartburn over all of this, I think we have to make sure that we look at the bigger picture. And so, you know, finding that balance. So again, no, I haven't looked into it as deeply as I want to, and as I will. But then leaning on you are the people that have expertise on these things, and that's why I value what you all think.
Well, I guess my follow-up question to that is, does the ordinance have teeth in such, I mean, can it even include language that would address this issue? I mean, is that even feasible for the ordinance to actually like dictate whether or not there's, you know, a use of specific types of materials, or you know, or encourage the use of fire, you know, resistant materials or anything like that?
Right now, it kind of heads the opposite way, so it's not, it's allowing more flexibility in the use of different building materials, as opposed to kind of specifying a minimum building standard. And so the ordinance, it lets people who have more than the 2.5 acres in particular areas build under this new ordinance. It also lets people with smaller acreages use this ordinance if their home was destroyed in a fire, or if there's like someone that has a house that was built that wasn't compliant, that is trying to at least come into compliance with these very minimum standards. And that's kind of focused at the Trinity Pines and places like that, where they're trying to at least get a little bit better habitation for people. So, but yeah, in terms of the home hardening, it really goes backwards.
Larry, you have a question?
No, I had a comment. Am I muted?
Nope, we can hear you.
Okay, no, I had a comment. I think that in SAFE, we have always talked about and encouraged Class K housing. So I think it's a good move forward, but I think it would be counterproductive to do it the way that it was conceived of 20 years ago. I mean, right now, the trend is to make everything hardened, all new structures hardened. So it seems that it would be on us to recommend that the county require home hardening techniques to be used in building any new structure in Trinity County. It's cheaper to do it when you build it than it is to come in and retrofit it later.
And there's ways to harden with natural materials that could be locally sourced. So there's ways to offset some of the economic burden. You could do the 3 feet of stone at the bottom or whatever, but what I would like to see is like to honestly go through the list of our partners and see who wants to pursue the letter and who doesn't. And if we have a majority that doesn't, then we drop it. Are we interested in doing that, or do we not want to make our
Put our partners on the spot?
yeah, but how
Gotta
else
make
do
hard
we
decisions sometimes.
how else do we figure out if we have a majority to move forward?
Okay, so how about if we do this? Those of you on Zoom, you can raise your hand if you think we should respond generally, and those in the room can respond with your hands up, and we'll just kind of count hands.
Well, how do you do that? I've never figured out how you raise your hand.
Under reactions.
Kenneth, we can see you. You can raise your hand next to your face.
Well, I just want to say I concur with what Larry said. I've always been in favor of Class K housing, but we are definitely in a different situation now. And I think that it behooves anybody building now to use materials that are going to harden their exterior of their houses. Even though I used lumber that was milled on my property from trees from my property. And I don't have hardened siding.
And there are some things that aren't super expensive, like the fire resistant vents, those aren't super expensive compared to installing the sprinkler system on the interior. So, we could recommend home hardening that would still not, like Amelia said, still not conflict with the desire to keep the costs lower. So.
So are you suggesting we just make a very generic statement supporting home hardening rather than specifics of what you're expecting builders to do?
Right, yeah. I mean, I was kind of saying, I think we should let the supervisors know that we've been working in this certain direction. The Fire Safe Council has been promoting home hardening, defensible space, signage. They talk about, the fire chiefs talk about signage and, water source identification, which we've been doing with the Blue Dot program. So I think we can say there are these things that we can still do that are compatible with, the Class K housing, and we would just like them to consider that this is where the direction we've been trying to encourage our community to go in, and so would they please consider that?
Well, I think when you say things like, well, there are things that you could at least do, that leads to the conversation, well, what are those things? And suddenly you're asking to define those things. And I don't think that the Fire Safe Council should do that, but as Kenneth, stated, just a generic statement about, yes, we support home hardening for Trinity County.
It may be helpful to also identify the extent to which you think something like, excuse me, like this would impede the ability to get future funding. If that's something that you can quantify.
Would you say that again, Jill? It would impede what?
Oh, well, Amelia had said that if there was something like this on the records, it may make it more difficult for you to apply and receive future home hardening funding help.
Yeah, I have to think about that. Maybe Amelia and I can talk about it. So we've been talking about FEMA's BRIC program, which is their, I forget what the acronym stands for. And there are pilot projects in the state where FEMA is providing money to retrofit homes, existing homes, to make them more hardened. And so we've been, potentially mulling over whether or not we could apply for that for Trinity County. I don't know that they would say, well, since you're kind of, you don't have an ordinance that requires everybody to meet some minimum standard, that you are less likely to get funding. I'm just not sure how FEMA would look at that.
I think the better question is going to be how many other counties have this Class K housing and have hardening in those requirements, and what that language looks like, as opposed to us adding the hardening or not.
So, I mean,
it's just creating more non-defensible houses. So we're opening up the county to have higher loss in the future, because you're going to have more flammable houses. And so you're going to then potentially have greater risk for loss of structure in the future.
So there is this county ordinance is based on something in the state building codes that lets counties adopt this type of ordinance. So, and there are numerous counties that have adopted it. Some of them have been pretty generous. Some of them have, like Shasta County, only let people who were, who lost homes in the car fire rebuild under this. So, so there are gradations in terms of where people go from the state, original state building codes. So, I have no idea if the state is reconsidering that as a whole, but you know, right now they allow this. Anyway.
So I'm wondering, my hand's raised. I'm wondering how the insurance companies are looking at Class K housing and even regular housing that is not built with hardening. I read articles that people propose that they should give a break to people who harden their homes, retrofit them. And also I know that there are companies that will not insure in high fire hazard zones, which is most of California now. So are there any ramifications of this for landowners and for insurance rates on other people's properties who currently have insurance or trying to get insurance?
Well, the assumption is that these homes would not be able to get insurance. And how it would affect other homeowners, I don't know.
My understanding is, at least with the State Farm, that the qualifications to do their home hardening to get the benefit or get the break on your insurance policy on that is extremely strict, and that there's only based on a quick assessment, there's only a few at the local State Farm office that will qualify in the county. So I don't think most of the houses here currently meet the standards to receive those benefits anyway.
Okay, so let's try a general poll of whether or not you think the Fire Safe Council should send a very generic letter saying, this is what we've been doing. We promote home hardening, yada, yada, yada. And, we would like you to consider that as you're considering the ordinance. So how many think we should send a letter like that? Okay.
I know.
All right, so I'm thinking we won't send a letter. Okay. All right, so I will, though, at least send the draft letter from the fire chiefs to Amelia, and let Amelia send that out to the members of the Fire Safe Council. So if individual members of the Fire Safe Council want to contact their supervisors, or Zoom into the Board of Supervisors meeting, or whatever, you still have the opportunity to express your thoughts on this issue. Okay.
Is that really appropriate? Like, I don't know if that's the right way to do it. I feel like if the Chiefs Association finalizes their letter and then either puts it in a paper or something like that, then that's appropriate. But I don't know, especially with the draft letter, if the Chiefs don't sign it, I don't want to be sending misinformation or so I feel like it needs to be finalized by the Chiefs Association before I do anything.
Okay. Okay, so I won't send the draft letter out. I'll just let you know that it will be considered by the Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, August 2nd at 10 o'clock. If someone wants to look at the Board of Supervisors agenda items, those will be posted Friday, and you can read the ordinance and figure out whether or not there's something you want to say. How's that? Work?
I think that works.
Okay, all right, let's move on. So coordinator update, Amelia.
I'm gonna make it short and sweet. So we've already been through the first 1,000 of the human fire safe council bags and the pet evacuation preparedness bags. So we've ordered a second 1,000 of each. We partnered with the food bank, so they've been getting it out with their food distributions, which has been a great addition to our partnerships. We're really excited about that. We've just been pretty low key, keeping our heads down in July. Lots going on, and then August, I'll be out of town for a while. So I'll be picking things up when we have the Grizzly Corps members come back in August, and so we'll have a lot kicked back up. Local area advisors, they were finally approved at a board meeting ago. And so we're working on getting their orientation. I need to touch base with the Board of Supervisors to see if they're going, or sorry, with the Trinity County OES to see if they're going to make them the little cards again that are their ID cards and that kind of stuff. But with that OES manager position vacant, it just makes things take longer because we know Mike has a lot on his plate. And so just continuing to move forward with that. The neighborhood ambassadors, same things. We're working to coordinate an orientation for them. At this point, it will likely be in September. And then still looking for more local advisors, still looking neighborhood ambassadors. I'm good with what we have to do the pilot project with them and then move on from that. The evacuation brochures were sent to the printers last week. They're being printed as we speak for any maps that or any areas that had more than 20 houses in them. And then we picked up the paper yesterday and are printing the maps and the brochures for any areas that have less than 20 houses in them. So that helped us cut our printing costs a little bit. So those are going to be going out next week. And we're still working with Trinity County Sheriff's Department to get all of the zones updated in Code Red. And so it'll be up and ready shortly.
Will you provide the list of all the signed up local area advisors? So when if we have incidents, we can be making contact with them and vice versa.
Correct.
Jerry, you have a question?
That was exactly what I was going to request. Thank you.
Okay.
Jerry, you haven't been approved yet. You still have to go before the board, but we're getting closer. You're the one that didn't make the last round.
Oh, okay, but do send out places where you need them. So like was suggested, maybe we can make contact.
Sounds good. I'm planning to put a letter in the Trinity Journal next week too, to
Okay, great.
kick things off again.
Okay, so I think we're ready then for project updates, figure out what everybody's doing. Unless anybody has any questions for Amelia. Any questions for Amelia? No, okay.
Before we get into project updates, maybe we have Sandy on, she can just touch base on the fire restrictions that went into effect yesterday afternoon. I think it's probably more, it's better here than trying to squeeze it in with a Forest Service update.
Perfect, okay. Sandy, what's the scoop?
Hi, this is Sandy.
You're back on mute.
Okay, Sandy, we can't hear you.
Can you unmute her?
Yeah, I wrote it.
We can only request.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. It puts me in like a driving mode on my phone. So we have gone into fire restrictions on the Shasta Trinity National Forest. There is one current order that has been in place in the Alps wilderness around the High East Lakes that will stay in effect. And then in addition to that, our order, which I did email to you today, Amelia, I'm pulling it up right now. Basically, you can have a fire if you're within any of the designated areas, which are approved campgrounds and designated fire use sites. And then within 10 feet of the water's edge on the Trinity Lake, I believe. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Yep, that's correct. I read it yesterday.
Okay. And so I'm working with our PAO shop. They kind of did a less than informative release this morning. The message that we're trying to get out to people is the prohibited behaviors. So no campfires, no driving, off roads, no smoking unless you're in an area that's cleared. And so if you're sharing it with people, I'm asking if you can stay away from the verbiage of stage 1 or stage 2. That's an internal message for agencies, and it is different from forest to forest. So when you say stage 2, it can mean something to the public that doesn't actually apply. So just refer to the order. I also sent out a graphic that just has like a quick image of what is not okay and what is okay. Basically, you can have a propane stove type stove with a shutoff. That's what it needs to have, a shutoff. If you're outside of the established campgrounds or the designated areas, you can have a campfire in the wilderness still, as long as you're outside of the other order that stays in place around the High East Lakes. Hopefully that's not too confusing and convoluted. And if anybody has questions, you can always call me.
Yeah, so Sandy, the know before you go flyer, I was gonna post this, but it doesn't have 10 feet. You can have a fire within 10 feet of Trinity Lake, although I don't know who's gonna hike all the way out those mud flats.
Okay, so
from vegetation and 10 feet from the lake.
So regarding the know before you go flyer, Carol, that is the information that it says in there. Like if you refer to exhibit A and B of the order, you can find the other information and where you can go to get that. Actually, I edited it a little bit more this morning and I can send that to you. Basically, my method of educating for fire restrictions is all the signs that you pass say fire restrictions, no campfires allowed. If you open up the order and you read it and you decide to have a fire next to the lake, good on you. You read it, you're educated, you're the force user that's responsible. But it's too convoluted to get, and there's too much to put into it, like, except you can do it here and here and here. And so the prohibited message, the main message is the prohibited behaviors. And then if people want to go and read the order, which is on our website and at our district office, and I also available via email if anybody needs it, then they can. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Carol, the know before you go is so people look at it and go, oh, I can't have a fire. But when they read the order and on our website, there is information that explains the if, may, shall, can, possibly, sometimes. It's just too much to put on a sign and a flyer because you have 2 seconds of their attention when somebody's looking at it. And you want them to retain the prohibited behaviors. Like that's what the message we're trying to get across.
Okay, I just don't know how many people are gonna be welding on like national forest lands and stuff, you know, so.
Okay. So while that might not be an issue in your immediate area, it is an issue. And it's part of the order. So the things that are in that image are the things specifically addressed in our forest order. It does not address shooting because shooting is not a part of our forest order. It does not address some things that other forests do because that is specific to our order. If you read our order, it addresses welding with an open flame because it's an issue. Sometimes we give a permit to Caltrans specifically during restrictions to still be allowed to do that. And that's why the order says that you can, if you have written permission to do so, like the order doesn't apply to you. But the welding is absolutely pertinent, just like the campfire and the driving and the smoking.
Okay, yeah, we shared the Shasta Trinity Facebook post on the volunteer fire department Facebook, so we're trying to let people know, and I've been thinking about posting this, but I'm just thinking,
Well, Carol, if you don't get around to posting it, don't worry about it. I'm going to put it up everywhere, so it's not necessarily your responsibility. This is the messaging that we're going to go with, and until I'm told to do otherwise.
got it. Okay, great. I like the poster. I just thought, welding? Is there welding on Forest Service lands?
There is.
Yeah. Okay, all right, good. All right, so any questions for Sandy? I think we can put it on the Fire Safe Council Facebook page, Amelia.
I will link it to their page.
Yeah, that's what I did. I just shared their post. Okay,
It's Rivers this morning.
all right, any other questions for Sandy? All right, so get the word out. No fires on Forest Service, no campfires, no fires. Unless it's in a designated campground with a Forest Service provided campfire ring or barbecue.
There's a lot of other options.
Okay. So then are we ready to move on to project updates?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think BLM is here.
Nope.
Okay, CAL FIRE, go for it.
I
Dave?
start, I really don't have anything really new to report for Trinity County. Aaron May, most of my work's been focusing on Shasta County right now out of Platina. So just planning another 10,000 acre project just east of Platina. So not much to report for Trinity County right now on my end. I don't know if Aaron does,
Aaron?
not to put him on the spot.
They did have their defensible space inspectors at the fair, and that was really good. And they had their models of the different vent styles out in hardened home and then unhardened home with defensible space and without defensible space. So they did, that was really nice to see. A lot of people wanted to ask about the vents, and we sent them there, and then people wanted to ask us stuff, and so they sent them to us. So it was really good to have them there.
Great.
Okay, all right. So Caltrans, Tom and you guys at the Zoom meeting, at the conference table, what's going on with Caltrans?
Oh, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I can let them know about some local stuff. So we're doing some mowing operations. We're working on 299 as conditions allow. We have two mowers. We have a brush mower and we have a side flail mower. So currently they're working north of Weaverville, working up towards Training Center. So we'll continue those operations as conditions allow. Other than that, we're doing basic highway maintenance with grinder digouts. And I think Tom wanted to touch a little bit on some of the tree stuff downtown. We do have hazard trees, but we won't be working on those till later in the year as conditions get better. We did our spring hazard tree removal. So next time we do any hazard removal trees, unless it's emergency, will be probably sometime in late October.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. So I know this is about safety, not so much about fire. I wanted to get a small group opinion, just like a test trial, and try to get opinion on the city trees downtown. They've becoming a hazard or a nuisance with the uplifted concrete and the uplifted concrete and high limbs, unreachable limbs with summer limb drop. Carol, can I share the screen?
Amelia?
Will work
Well,
now?
I'll just, let's see. There we go. So these are the trees on the left. Can you see my screen there with Google Map?
Yes.
Okay, you have about 52 trees. About 19 are a problem. Just to give you a quick overview. There's 52 trees and from Beamer to Court Street. 19 are problem trees. Most of them are sweet gum, about 85 feet. There was a concrete project, ADA project in 2015 that addressed some of the sidewalk and was repaired. And then 7 years later, we're already having issues with uplift. The liquid ambers are prone to a condition called summer limb drop. I'm sure you've seen it, where just out of nowhere, a limb will drop. Liquid ambers have a very brittle branch. They have compartmentalized crotches where the branch meets the trunk, and they both grow and push each other out in a way. And then with the uplift of water and heavy branches and seed pods, you'll have a limb that just would drop and create the hazardous condition. Trees are too tall, or a lot of them are very tall for us to be able to maintain. And it takes us away from other issues. Excuse me. So we're coming up with they also have large seed pods that are can be a slip and fall hazard. And so we're looking at a potential options right now. These are just options, trying to, want to emphasize that. So I'm looking at about 12 trees over by the parking lot, by the state park, and over by the church and the community park there. And suggesting that we replace, remove and replace these trees because of their height, inability to maintain, and the concrete uplift that they create. Give you a better picture. So there at the parking lot, we have some included bark and some uplifted concrete that was already replaced. This concrete should have been lasted for 50 years. Here we have some concrete damage, some included bark. Those branches, one of those branches is going to fail, and it's and then closer to the historic building, those liquid ambers there. Again, more concrete uplift. Joe's and Micah's crew have to go out and grind the concrete to make level. That takes away from their time and maintaining other areas.
Hey, Tom, can I comment
really
on-
not sustainable. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's not just the time to go grind them, but if you go back to that picture, Tom, you'll see where the pavement actually heaves to where we're taking the tripping hazard off, but we're really not addressing the unevenness of the, we're just eliminating a tripping hazard. That's all we're doing. So the sidewalks still heave and they're not level, with ADA compliance, and also, elderly people and kids skateboarding and stuff. It's still potentially is hazardous to people to have that situation, even though we're taking off the lip. So it's not a kick hazard, it's still hazardous. And you can see the grinding there where they did the nice stamped concrete, and then we're grinding into it to level it out. So then you get, it just doesn't look nice either. Sorry, Tom.
So Tom, I appreciate the the hazard and the difficulty that you guys have dealing with them, but I'm kind of wondering why this is a fire safe council issue. Do you think they're a fire hazard?
It's a public safety hazard, and I'm just trying to I'm familiar with this group and just trying to get some feedback, simple feedback if it's possible, and before we take it to council.
Okay. Did you said remove and replace, did you have an anticipated change in species, or that would not create these same problems, or what was the theory there?
I have a couple alternatives, and I'm just going to share them with you. One of which would be that the county would take over the maintenance. I'm just going to go through all of them, so it's not one weighted more than the other.
Yeah, but we're going to be running out of time, so.
Okay, so yeah, we would either replace in kind or choose another species. We do have some other species. One of the other things I would suggest is that if we replace the tree on the outside of the concrete, so it has better access to soil moisture, and the roots have a place to grow, and or replace them outside the concrete altogether. So this would just help with mitigate the public hazard and make maintenance more efficient.
Okay,
so that's a quick.
All right, great. Well, thanks, Tom. So, so do we have any comments or thoughts from the Fire Safe Council?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to have the conversation about the trees that are going to be in the downtown of one of our communities, and what the tree selection is going to be, or whether there's going to be, like, the tree removal is not really our concern, but if there's going to be replacement of trees, I think we should have the discussion of what we're putting in downtown. And I think that's relative to the Fire Safe Council.
Well, the other.
Okay, well, just a caution, this is an extremely controversial issue. There are people who are willing to chain themselves to the trees. And so I'm a little concerned that we would be getting in the middle of a very controversial issue that's only peripherally related to fire safety.
I don't think it's a decision of, like, for us, it's not the decision of the trees getting cut down or not. It's just the idea of what they would be replaced with. So I don't know.
Okay, so my suggestion would be maybe we could schedule this for an agenda on a future agenda item. You know, Tom could send us this information and we could look at it and, you know, spend more time on it, because we have it's already 2:20 and we have a lot of agencies to go through. So I'm just thinking it doesn't lend itself to having a detailed discussion at this moment. So unless there are really pertinent comments right now, I'm thinking maybe we can re-agenda it, unless there's some time frame, Tom, that you need feedback in.
That was my question, was what is the timeline for the removal?
This is just the preliminary discussion, trying to get it started, generate conversation, get feedback, and provide an appropriate plan with community input.
Okay.
So this is just a kickoff, kind of, before I take it to council. Just curious to see about local opinion in this group. A quick little, yeah, try to, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. But nothing, nothing serious at this time.
Okay.
No time or time.
Thanks, Tom.
Hey, Tom, this is Dave DeLange, Trinity PUD. I'm familiar with all the trees. I think we had a tree committee 12, 15 years ago that was addressing these. And then in 2015, when you heavily pruned them, I was consulted as an arborist. Everybody said they were going to die. They bounced back even more. I hate to see the trees go, but at the same time, I see the need for it. Unfortunately, the replacement trees, I see that if everybody's so concerned about it, we're going to need to have something in place to keep them alive for the first 5 years of their planting. But there's a couple of the trees, if we're going to go fire safe council meeting, directly under the high voltage power line across from the nugget that if we're going to stick to this meeting, that tree would be the one that would need to go first and foremost.
Yeah, I noticed that one. I didn't put it in because it didn't have concrete uplift. Yeah, I'll put that on there too, and just, make note that these are problems, and making the community aware of it, and trying to go forward. So I appreciate that, Dave.
Okay, so if we put this on the agenda for a future meeting, so we'll have a more robust discussion then. Does anybody have any comments for Tom, as far as what needs to be in that future discussion?
I'll just shoot you an email with a couple questions, Tom, and then we'll be good.
Great, thank you. Do you have my email address, I think? Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Tom.
I think we
Great,
want.
thank you.
Species, I think we'd like to see species specific, as far as what the replacement trees would be.
But that's just
Sure.
one of the alternatives, right? You said one of
Yeah.
the other alternatives that the county takes responsibility.
Well, the other, like a sidewalk agreement or maintenance agreement, as far as the functionality and that's what Tom's proposal was, is the county wants them, they want them to take ownership and maintain them.
Right on.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this to us. I just am concerned a little bit about fire season more and, priorities, so.
Sure. Getting back to fire, we are working with planning with a roadway maintenance along 299 there at Trinity Dam Boulevard. And so the roadway construction will put in the vegetation maintenance in their plan, so that we can work that easement with BLM and state lands for maintaining that section. It goes from post mile 64 to 70 there at the intersection. So that'll help with evacuation access, but as well as I have other districts that I'm trying to work with, other counties I'm trying to work with as well, and trying to prioritize prioritize the implementation of the work. So we'll have this on our available for CEQA NEPA approval, and then.
So that I think you talked about that once before. So what is the timeline then for when you think you might be doing that fuel break or fuel treatment? Tom? So Tom, what's the time frame, the timeline for that fuel reduction along 299? Okay.
It hasn't had NEPA or CEQA, so it'll be a while.
It'll be a while. Okay.
It's probably, that project, I think, is probably deliverable in about 2026.
Okay.
So
Did
2
it-
years out. That's the cabinet that I was referring to.
Okay. Is Tom still on, or did he drop off? It looks like he dropped off. I'll shoot him an email, but I think we had discussed what the width was, so if we just get an idea of what his final width was in his proposal.
All right.
Like to know that information, so I'll email him.
Okay, so moving down project updates. I don't think we have anyone from Higham Palm Fire Safe Council. Gina, do you want to tell us what Lower Trinity is doing, or PBA, Fire Safe Council, Stone Creek?
Yeah. Hello again. My name is Gina Moon. I'm the current president for the Willow Creek Fire Safe Council. So that's what I'll be speaking on today. We've been busy. We have a lot going on. And our chipper program, of course, has been very busy, keeping up after the snow down and the 2 years of COVID. We've been explaining to people we're just behind. And then, of course, we had that knob fire right in the backyard. So everybody's been busy and we're just chipping there. Some good news for our council is we were flying for a project coordinator and we made a decision. He will be coming on starting August 1st. Jeffrey Churchill, and we've met him. We're pretty excited about kicking off some projects in and around the greater Willow Creek area. And there's just a lot of work to be done. So we're going to be looking forward to all of that. The Flash program is something that's come out from Humboldt County Fire Safe Council. We're going to be active with that. And so any questions on our subcontractor? If not, I'll move on to, we also, this is big news for our council, is we rented an office space. We have, and for the past 15 to 18 years, been working out of different people's homes and bedrooms and going over to the museum where there's Wi-Fi and, you know, making it happen. But we entered into a lease for an office space. It's downtown Willow Creek, right next to the Early Bird, that little yellow A-frame. That's going to be our office. And so keeping it short and sweet, we have all that to look forward to, but I would like to share also within our district here on the South Fork Road, which I'm a resident, is the RCD crew and the watershed crew have been very busy out here, making a big dent in our slash and the trees that came down back during the snowstorm in December. So they're doing a great job, triple digits, and they're out there. We wake up at 06:30 to the chainsaws and, and the chippers. So I was kind of thinking they'd be here at my neighborhood today, but they bumped back up the road to the chipper was running. And so that is a good thing. Thank you. Thinking long range, we want to apply for more. But and on the rest of my other stuff, I guess the local area advisor was mentioned that it hasn't quite went through to the Board of Supervisors yet, but just kind of wanted to know where our involvement is there and if I was into that to some degree, or what else do I need to know for that? And I think that's about it. That's all I have. Pretty excited about our new subcontractor, the office, and all the work that's being done. So thank you.
Regina, you're in and approved and passed by the Board of Supervisors. I just need to get some general information shared between everybody, and then everybody's good to go, except for Jared.
Okay. Oh, poor Jared. Okay, thank you.
And what was the first name of your project coordinator?
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Churchill. Okay, great.
And it's Geoffrey.
Okay. And do you know have any other status maybe about the Lower Trinity PBA kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, I do. I did miss the last meeting for the board meeting. I am still a board of directors on there. They've been busy. I think they've received some monies from HAF for building crew capacity, and they coincide with local business there, Adaptive Forestry Solutions, and they have been busy. So I know PBA is kind of just doing, at this point, like treatments, thinking ahead for projects. So it's coming along. There's definitely an interest. On the chat, I did see discussion about they might want to do a name change, and I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I missed that meeting, but they still exist. It's still a good thing. And that's part of our plan with our subcontractor. You know, when we get out there to do some of this project work, we're going to be rearranging the fuels. It might be chipping it, cutting thin. we might be burning it, you know, and we've got local burners. So, but yeah, the PBA, that's about what I know. Still up and running.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Dina.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I think next up is Deb Harris, the Air Board. What would you like to tell us?
Basically, there's not much on our agenda right now other than pre-wildfire. We're in the process of we had a NOAA meeting with NOAA and other air districts in preparation for wildfire messaging. And we are proceeding on to meet with public health and OES for all 3 counties. And that should take place in the next few weeks here. And then we're gearing up and keeping an eye on happenings around the state for smoke impacts. And the Oak Fire did put some high level haze into your area in the last couple of days. And it's supposed to be really hot. So I think that'll, depending on fire activity, you may see some of that when the winds continue to be from the southwest. But that's it for us right now.
Okay, thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
How about SAFE? Any updates?
We're still monitoring the Forest Service projects, the pilot project. We want to go out in the field and look at that as soon as we can. There's a scheduled field trip to see the project proposed for the Burnt Ranch area. That's on the 19th of August. So we're looking forward to seeing what they're talking about when we're on the ground there. And we're really looking forward, or I'm really looking forward to the Six Rivers and Shasta Trinity working on a project on South Fork Mountain for a fuel break along the ridge top. So those are the things we're monitoring.
Okay. I don't see anybody from SPI. Okay, so I think Trinity Center Volunteer Fire Department is up next. So I don't know. We had an idiot last night with a brush pile, but anyway. The only thing I want to say is we have started our Big Red Truck program. It took 4 hours to do 3 home visits. People really like to chat. So they're getting good information about defensible space and home hardening. And we got some excellent information about don't go to that house because you can't turn the fire engine around, and so forth. So we are anyway pursuing the Big Red Truck program and collecting a lot of pretty valuable information. So let's see, I think Jill had to leave, so I don't think we have anything from the Board of Supervisors.
Jill's there. You're on mute, Jill.
Is Jill still there? Oh, there you are. Hi.
Darn, hi, sorry. I was just trying to unmute to tell you that no, I don't have any updates for you, but thank you.
Okay. All right. The collaborative, an update from you guys.
I don't think there's too much. Larry kind of covered it. Seems we're in a kind of a summer slump, but we are looking forward to the field trip in August up to downriver, the Triangle, Big Bar, High and Palm, back down to Burnt Ranch. So just see that project. Unless they start marking the pilot program, and then that'll take precedent. We'll go out and watch the marking cruise.
Okay. Okay, RCD, what are you up to?
I'll go at least for the Forest Health Program. We've been mostly active in the Reading Indian Creek area, which is part of our Forest Health CAL FIRE or CCI project out there. I think to date they have around 46 acres cut and piled, so we should be closing in on that pretty soon, at least for that one unit. And then we've been out on the BLM land, part of the Weaverville Community Forest between the Mill Street and Timber Ridge. There's just a little section, so we just did 50 feet in there. And our crews are currently up on Democrat Gulch Road, which is the main kind of ridge line between Weaverville and sort of Junction City. And so they're starting a fuel break on that under some Scout Fire funding, fire prevention grant we have. And as well as should be starting pretty soon, some stuff up on Browns Mountain, doing a fuel break up there. And then we finally started our Guy Covington project at the intersection of 3 and Guy Covington Drive. And so we've spent only a couple weeks out there, and then we're currently having to pull back on that because of the high temperatures, low humidities. And so we will chip away at that as weather and time permits. So that's kind of what the Forest Health program's been up to as far as our fuels reduction and those types of things.
Does that include the community chipping program? I mean, where are you at on the RAC grant and CAL FIRE funding for that, for chipping?
All 3 RAC proposals that related to chipping, Fire Safe Council and Guy Covington have all been executed as of early this week. I think the last one for the chipping was executed.
Yeah, so we've there was some kind of like chipping that we couldn't get to in May, and they've started doing that again as well, mostly in the Guy Covington kind of Long Canyon area. So that's started, and then we've had some internal issues, but they'll be finishing up all the people who had signed on recently that we couldn't get to in May, and that started this week, and it'll probably continue into next week, at least a day.
There's a homeowner at the corner of Scenic and Greenhorn. So who would I check to find out? Because he has a bunch of piles ready to be chipped. How would I find out if he actually turned in a form or if he just assumes you guys are coming?
You would talk to Dave.
Talk to Dave, okay.
You could probably, I mean, you can email me or call me later after this meeting or something.
But you guys potentially would be out there for another day or so?
They're out chipping right now, so I don't think they're gonna get it all, so they'll probably be out next week as well, chipping, now that we have some of those funding sources in.
Okay. All right.
Everything.
Other RCD.
The only other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly was we had the Weaverville Community Forest Steering Committee had a somewhat impromptu and limited meeting with the national director of the BLM. Her name is Tracy Stone Manning, and she was also joined by the state director, Karen Muritzen, and members of staff from both the state office as well as the Reading Field office. We met on site in the community forest and had a little walk around, talked about the history of the project to sort of bring Tracy up to speed a little bit about our particular little corner of the woods, and had a pretty good discussion with led mostly by Rob Winkler from the BLM, talking about both the upcoming timber harvest that's planned on the BLM side of the community forest, as well as a larger fuels project that encompasses a fair bit of that west side BLM land. So it was a very productive and good conversation, and I just wanted to report out that that had happened. So thank you.
So any questions for what's going on at the RCD? No? All right. Dave, Trinity PUD.
Yeah, we've got hazard tree crews scattered throughout the county trying to tackle the mass die-off. In the last month, we've removed approximately 700 hazard trees, trimmed another 550. We've retreated certain subject poles again since the late rains, another 200 of those that have been back down to ground dirt level. So yeah, it's an uphill battle, but we've brought some other crews in. I've got currently about 7 crews working out in the heat.
So if you've removed 700 trees, is that like a tenth or a half, or, I mean?
Well, it changes daily. So it's, we'll go into an area and we'll get the worst of the trees, and a tree will be dead, or it's dying. It'll be dead by the end of summer, but we're leaving that for now just to move on to prioritize the most hazardous ones.
Okay, any questions for Dave about the PUD?
I have one. Dave, I just wanted any update on the right-of-way project?
Yes, in fact, we had a meeting with the biologists for the RAP project. We had a field meet, kind of a bio summit, I guess, with all the biologists. Just yesterday went to 6 or 7 field sites. Their BLM, not watershed, but water quality board, water board, Forest Service, California Fish and Wildlife was there also. They had some final concerns. They were asking our contract biologist about our environmental group, and I believe they should be submitting the final comments for that within the next couple of weeks. And from there, I believe it will move on to public comment. That's about all I know about the project right now.
Thank you.
Welcome. And we did have, I guess I should bring up, we did have 2 incidents where there was potential power line contact fire. Both of them occurred, well, both kind of in Lewiston, Douglas City area, and both green trees, sudden failure. So, I mean, that was something that, we can take out all the hazard trees we want, but there's still the potential is always there. One of them was actually uproot, which is very rare for summertime. And one of them was like a sudden limb failure situation where it was a really hot day like this, and the water transpired up to the leaves, and the leaves shut it down, and it fell over. So luckily we had our local fire crews there, and they were able to corral them.
And do you have any cause of the flume fire? I believe that started along the power line also.
I'm not sure I'm familiar. Which one is that?
Would be the one between Trinity Center and Coffee Creek at Hatchet Creek.
Yes, that was an out of right of way pine tree that we were actually in the area getting to it. It had fallen over and made contact, and so same thing, tree contact.
Okay. All right, bad tree. Okay, let's see. So we don't have Dina from Sonoma. Okay, go for it, Tim. Shasta Trinity.
Okay, so on the Trinity River Management Unit, as Chris stated, we've been working with the RCD. We have our chipper up supporting the operation at Guy Covington. To the west of Weaverville, we're working with the Watershed Center doing mastication on Grub Gulch, connecting from the highway down to just short of West Weaver Creek, and that falls in the footprint that we masticated in probably 2005. So just reinitiating that line in there. We are doing fuels reduction through a contract out on Trinity Dam Boulevard from the road up to the heli base. They made it down to Pinewood Cove or Pine Cove Marina, excuse me, as I stated earlier. But the project activity levels are at a point that we are shutting down most forestry work right now. So we're at the highest level right now. So EV. So we can issue a variance under certain scenarios, and we are willing to entertain that in the right spot, provided that we have suppression equipment that's available and on site for those types of projects. We're starting to plan out some of our next fuel breaks where we have DEPA coverage, continuing to work with the Watershed Center on the Bowerman project as it hopefully gets closer and closer to being able to send out the scoping letter. The project at Carville, treating around some of the homes in there, scoping has been completed. We've received a couple of comments that we're going to address, and then we should be working on the decision memo. Oh, probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll start that. Internally, our replacement for Laura will be in place on Monday, but it's an individual that has a long way to go to be able to fill Laura's shoes. So hired them with less experience and a degree in hopes that we can develop that position over time. So Nathan Ulrich will be that contact. I'll bring him to some of the Fire Safe Council meetings to introduce him to the group, and he'll be in place. Oh, one thing that we continue to see is folks are continuing to dump home wood debris on national forest lands. And so, you know, we're talking about risk with tree failure on power lines. One of the spots that I've been watching, people are dumping their debris underneath the power lines, and it's about 6 to 7 feet deep at this point. So, you know, if you guys see or are aware of folks that are dumping their debris on forest lands, please advise them that there's better ways to do that than the elevated fire risk that creates.
This is like yard waste and green waste?
Yeah. There's actually split firewood out there right now where they split it and didn't want it, and it's laying on the ground.
And this is separate from the chips that you're potentially seeing.
Yeah, so there's chips that are getting dumped in spots, but then there's other spots where people are dumping their home debris, their yard waste. So so we have it, we're kind of getting hit in spots on both accounts. The issue is that it always gets dumped on a roadside, and when fires start on roadsides, and generally in Trinity County, there's power lines along the roadsides, right? We're just adding fuel in a spot that is maybe more susceptible to a fire. So, you know, to whatever extent that we can try to communicate that that's not an appropriate way to dispose of your wood waste, we want to continue to do that throughout the county. And then, Carol, you hit on it earlier, you know, debris burning should not be going on at any time, you know, when we're at this level of heat. And so we did have the individual that lit their windrow or burn pile yesterday out in Coffee Creek. There's a way to do that if you want a ceremonial fire, and you can get a permit to do that. But I would gather that nobody went to CAL FIRE and got a permit to have a bonfire ceremonial reasons on their private property, and it didn't sound like it was small enough to be considered a cooking fire either. So, you know, yeah, just fire safety. You know, we have there's lightning in the forecast for this weekend for the folks that maybe aren't tracking. And with the fuels conditions we have, any fire start has potential to exceed initial attack capacity. So we don't want to add human ignitions to maybe an already higher risk potential of natural ignitions. And that's what I have for the TRMU, and I'll kick it over to Randy if he wants to fill in for the South Fork Management Unit. I think Randy's gone.
What about Nancy Curran?
Let's see, before we go to Six Rivers, any questions for Tim about the TRMU projects? No, okay. So, yeah, so let's go to Six Rivers and Nancy.
All right, good afternoon. Okay, up until last week, we've been doing a bunch of air curtain burning. Deborah would be happy to hear we put 800 tons of slash into the air curtain instead of in lieu of open pile burning. The majority of tonnage is funded by our partners, Watershed Center, through their greenhouse, their CAL FIRE Forest Health greenhouse gas funds. And then a portion was funded with our BD funding. And most of that, currently we're working in the Beaver Slide salvage. When we're not doing air curtain burning, we're extracting a lot of firewood from slash piles. Again, utilizing the CAL FIRE Forest Health funds, thanks to the Watershed Center. And we've extracted about 120 cords of firewood for our public firewood gathering sites. Again, instead of that stuff burning in open pile burning, it's being utilized by the public. Also, again, thanks to the Watershed Center greenhouse gas funding, we've accomplished about 100 acres of mastication along Mad Ridge. It's all maintenance mastication and Mad Ridge fuel break and its lateral fuel break that we call the Van Dusen. We're planning some type 2 understory burns, again, maintenance along Mad Ridge. And we hope to have our August complex restoration CE signed by this October. That's it for the report out.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Nancy about what Six Rivers' projects are doing? Okay, all right, so Randy, Watershed Center.
Good afternoon. I did want to invite Xander to give an update on the things that he's been working on, and then I'll follow up with that.
Afternoon, how's the audio?
Good.
Great. Just been helping assist with compliance on the projects we've been working on, like the Bowerman Ridge and Weaver Basin Community Protection Plan north of town there. Our field surveys are just about wrapped up for the Bowerman project, which is good news. That's getting especially hot. And our goal for Weaver Basin is to start prepping burn units in September. That's my update for Fire Safety Council related projects.
So what's the time frame for the Bowerman Ridge project in terms of going to scoping and stuff?
I'll pass that one to Randy.
So we just had a great meeting with the Forest Service to talk about, quantifying the current condition and the need for treatment, and then how we're going to measure the proposed treatment in the document so that we can characterize the impact. And so I think now that we're all on the same page with that process, we'll be moving towards scoping before September. So we'd rather take the time now before we scope so that the package is in good shape and easily comprehensible and commentable by the public. So we're gonna invest that time upfront.
Okay, so, you know, I've kind of asked all along for the volunteer fire department to be able to really look at this in detail. And so I'm curious where in the process we can do that. Do you have to wait for public comment or?
Yeah, I think as part of scoping, that might make sense unless you wanted to do it prior to that. Did you not feel like the field trip was an opportunity to provide some input?
Well, it only looked at one little piece, you know, so I'm interested in, you know, the details of exactly where and all that. So, just because we know where we've had fire starts along Bowerman Ridge and all that. And so, so how, you know, I don't want to, you know, feel like a broken record saying we wanted to be able to, you know, look at the project, but where's the best place for us to find out the details of what you're gonna scope out, I guess, or whatever.
Well, I think there was a bit of a reluctance to, you know, get too far ahead of the collaborative input that we might get on that field trip. And so now we're in the process of just writing everything down and preparing the scoping document. I always feel like that's such a great time to look at the details and make comments. But I think we'd all be open to setting something up if you would prefer to take that tact.
Okay, I just
prior to scoping coming out.
Yeah, we were discouraged from, you know, participating earlier because it was like, this is just a deal between SPI and the Forest Service, you know? But, so, I don't, like I said, I don't want to butt in, but I you know, I think, you know, we're just curious how this is going to affect us because we're the ones that are going to be out there if there's a fire. So I'll just get in touch with you. That'll be great.
That would be great. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks, Randy.
So then in terms of other updates from the Watershed Center, I think many folks know that we helped work with NRCS, the Shasta Trinity and the Six Rivers and the RCD to pull together another round of requests for the Joint Chiefs program. And so I think we've answered all the questions from the different reviewers. We got some feedback about our maps and I've been making those changes. So we're just about there with the proposal, ready to go in for consideration. On the other implementation side of the house, I appreciate that a lot of folks reported on the work that we're doing. So I won't repeat that, but in addition to the South Fork Road treatments that Gina Moon mentioned, we are also starting to work in the Burnt Ranch project area as part of the fire prevention grant collaboration that we're doing with the RCD. So that work is starting out there. And we've got some loose ends in some of our other project areas that we'll be getting around and making sure that those get tied up. But the crew's really done such amazing work as part of that whole effort. We also had a fairly quick implementation of our Title III funding that we got to work on defensible space in the South County. So we have a little bit of noxious weed treatments to do as part of that overall effort, but all the defensible space work as part of that grant is complete. So that's kind of exciting. We'll be summarizing where that work occurred. And I think probably before the end of the calendar year, be able to close out that grant that we got through the Title III program. And we have been doing some initial planning work on that fuel break on South Fork Mountain. We had a flight with a drone up there that we did with the 6 rivers, and the data is kind of being delivered to the 6 rivers and the Shasta Trinity as we speak. So hopefully that'll be a good product for the planning. The way the imagery is done, it'll kind of represent a 3-dimensional mesh up there. So we can potentially have some models run to quantify the fuel loading and height of snags and some interesting products that we're hoping helpful for the planning effort. I think ideally we'd like to see how the forests like the product, see if it's helpful in the analysis or development of the project. But it's kind of an exciting tool that we've been exploring with Tim Bailey and some of the other folks that work in our kind of high-tech data realm here at the Watershed Center. So I think those are the big points, unless people have questions for anything that I've mentioned today or otherwise.
So anybody have any questions for Randy or Xander about Watershed Center projects? No. Okay, so
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. So what project updates did I miss? Is there anybody else that wants to report out on a project update? No. Okay. So just before we conclude then, so additions to the agenda for next month would be asking Tom March to provide, maybe send out ahead of time their description of the issues with the hazard trees in Weaverville and a discussion of that on the agenda. Any other agenda items that people want to discuss? Okay, well then I think that's it. I think we're adjourned unless anybody has anything else. Okay, see you next month on August 25th at 1 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.